The moment NASA's telescopes caught the sudden burst of light on the sun's surface, scientists froze in silence, their eyes fixed on the screen as if the universe had whispered a secret too powerful for human understanding, because what that PVs saw was not just a normal solar flare, not just the usual activity that the sun throws into space, but something far larger, far brighter, and far more violent than anything recorded in history. A strange explosion that seemed to ripple across the sun's surface like waves spreading over an ocean of fire, bending magnetic fields, stretching coronal arcs, and throwing out bursts of plasma so huge that even the instruments struggled to capture their full shape. And as the images streamed in real time, it felt like the sun itself had sent a mysterious signal, a cosmic heartbeat, reminding Earth of how fragile we are under its endless power. And yet this time there was something even more unsettling, because the explosion did not behave in the expected way. Instead of fading, instead of dispersing its energy into space, in a predictable arc, the blast seemed to grow in strange patterns, forming loops, spirals, and almost geometric shapes that made some experts whisper the unthinkable. Could this explosion be more than a natural event? Could it be a sign of something beyond physics, or perhaps even a message hidden in the chaos of solar fire? And the more they zoomed in, the stranger it became, as streams of plasma twisted into what looked like perfect circles, like coded symbols, painted in flames across the surface of the sun, glowing brighter than entire cities combined, glowing so bright that Earth-based observatories reported strange interference in communications, radio blackouts, and even pulses that felt timed, like the ticking of some ancient cosmic clock that had suddenly started again. And as these reports flooded NASA's control room, panic and awe mixed in the same breath, because they knew that explosions on the sun, solar flares, and coronal mass ejections are always dangerous. They can hit Earth with waves of radiation, they can shut down satellites, blind telescopes, and overload power grids, but this was on another level. This was not just a storm. It was a blast that looked alive, that seemed almost to react to the instruments watching it, and some whispered it looked like the sun was communicating, and though the senior scientists quickly dismissed those whispers as emotional exaggerations, they couldn't deny the sheer abnormality of what they were seeing. For hours the explosion danced across the sun, creating shockwaves that bent and curved like spirals of firestorms, and every second felt like a countdown to something Earth had never prepared for. Because if this explosion turned into a coronal mass ejection directed at our planet, it could cause a geomagnetic storm powerful enough to wipe out electricity worldwide, knock out satellites, and push humanity into darkness. But there was also another fear, more mysterious and unspoken, because deep inside the recorded patterns of the flare, certain shapes repeated, not randomly, but with a rhythm, a structure, almost like language. And when NASA's supercomputers analyzed the radiation pulses, they found a sequence, a repeating signature buried in the chaos, as if the explosion itself carried hidden information. And that discovery silenced the room more than the brightness of the flare itself, because in all the decades of watching the sun, they had never seen a solar eruption that behaved as though it was coded, designed, or directed. And so theories began to swirl in whispers. Was this explosion a natural anomaly, a never-before-seen solar phenomenon, or could it be that our sun, the very star that gave us life, was not as silent and simple as we believed? Could it be a medium through which unknown intelligence spoke across the cosmos? And as the footage replayed over and over, scientists felt both dread and fascination, because the sun, the oldest companion of Earth, had suddenly become a mystery, a burning riddle in the sky. And behind every flicker of that explosion, it felt like the universe was demanding us to pay attention, to look deeper, to realize that perhaps we were not just observers of cosmic fire, but witnesses to a message written in the language of stars. And what that message meant was a question no one could yet answer, only that the explosion was far from ordinary. And its effects had only just begun to reach us. Ratchets to onward, the narrative takes an even darker and stranger turn because scientists realized that the explosion they had captured on the surface of the sun was not just another solar flare or ordinary coronal mass ejection. It seemed to pulse as if following a hidden rhythm, almost like a heartbeat that echoed across the void of space, and each pulse carried signals when translated into radio frequencies. Strange repeating patterns that did not match any known cosmic background noise, and when NASA cross-checked these signals with past decades of solar data, they found faint traces of the same rhythm hidden in old recordings, suggesting that the sun had been carrying this mystery inside it for longer than anyone had noticed, but this explosion had magnified it to a level that could no longer be ignored. The first question in every scientist's mind was whether this was a purely natural phenomenon or whether something beyond human comprehension was hidden beneath the solar surface, because the sun has always been seen as a star of fire, plasma, and energy, not as a transmitter of cryptic messages. Yet here they were, waves of soundless echoes spreading across millions of miles as if the star was trying to communicate. And the strangest part was that whenever these pulses were played on loop in laboratories, they created almost geometric wave patterns in sand and water, as though the very vibrations of the explosion carried an unseen intelligence. Some researchers whispered that it reminded them of the language of creation, sacred geometry born out of cosmic fire, while others warned that they might be over-romanticizing data that could have a logical explanation. But the truth was that nothing in astrophysics could easily explain how chaotic plasma storms on the sun could generate such perfect recurring patterns, and so secret meetings were held deep within NASA's most secure facilities, rooms where cameras and recorders were banned. Rooms where only a handful of chosen scientists, mathematicians, and cryptographers sat around glowing monitors, replaying the pulse from the sun over and over, slowing it down, speeding it up, reversing it, until one late night someone whispered that the sequence looked eerily similar to a mathematical code known as the Fibonacci spiral. And if that were true, then the sun was not merely burning, but designing its eruptions in ways that followed the patterns of life itself, the same sequence seen in seashells, flowers, galaxies, and DNA. Could it be possible that the sun itself was a living intelligence, not just a star, but something much older and more conscious than human science had ever allowed itself to believe? This thought chilled everyone in the room because it suggested that the sun's explosion had not been random. It had been deliberate, like a flare of communication shot across the solar system, and the timing made it even more unsettling since the pulses coincided almost exactly with unusual gravitational anomalies that had been detected near the orbit of Jupiter, as though something massive but invisible was tugging at the balance of planets. And NASA could not dismiss the possibility that the sun's sudden violent explosion was a reaction to whatever unseen presence was approaching our solar system, as if the star itself was warning its planets, warning Earth, warning humanity. But who would believe such a story if it ever left the sealed doors of NASA's facility? Outside, the public was told only that a strong solar flare had occurred, causing potential disruptions in satellites, GPS, and radio communications, nothing more. But behind the curtain, the scientists were racing against time to decipher the hidden rhythm before the next pulse arrived, for they had calculated that another explosion was imminent, one even stronger than the first, and if the pattern truly followed the spiral, it meant that each burst would grow larger, more complex, and potentially more dangerous. One misstep and Earth could be bathed in radiation strong enough to cripple power grids, collapse communications, and even fry delicate technology upon which modern life depended. Yet the question still loomed larger than survival. Was this only about survival or about recognition? recognition that the sun, the very star that gave birth to life on Earth, was not just a star but perhaps a messenger or a gate, or even a guardian of something humanity had never dared to imagine. And as these questions weighed heavily on the scientists, strange anomalies began to occur on Earth itself. The auroras, which usually danced in green curtains near the poles, began appearing closer to the equator, glowing not just in green but in colors no human eye had reported before: deep purples, flashes of gold, and eerie shades of black light that did not make sense. Witnesses described seeing shapes in those auroras, figures that looked like symbols suspended in the atmosphere, as if the very skies were mirroring the sun's secret language.